When you think of Iran today, what comes to mind? The Ayatollahs, the morning of Karbala, a republic where Shia Islam is the state religion. But it is vital to understand one thing. None of this was the original destiny of these lands. For centuries, Iran was the intellectual and institutional center of Sunni Islam. So, how did this deeply rooted structure transform? The answer doesn't lie in a single event, but in three major successive turning points: an invasion, a period of chaos, and a Sufi order that managed to emerge from that turmoil. In the 10th and 11th centuries, under the rule of the great Seljuk Empire, the Iranian geography became the center of intellectual production for the Islamic world. Nishapur, Merv, Isfahan, Ray. These cities were not just trade hubs, they were home to great madrasas, libraries, and scholars. Imam Ghazali wrote here, Omar Khayyam pondered here, and Nizam al-Mulk governed here, laying the foundations of the institutional Islamic bureaucracy. During this period, Shiism was a minority in this geography, existing only in certain cities and communities. It was never the dominant faith. Iran's identity was interwoven with the institutional structure of Sunni Islam, and this structure remained largely intact until it faced a massive external force. In 1219, the armies of Genghis Khan turned westward. Nishapur fell, Merv fell, Herat, Ray, Isfahan, one after another. Historians advise caution regarding the numbers, but one thing is certain. The Mongol invasion destroyed not only cities, but institutions. Irrigation systems were ruined, madrasas closed, and scholars either fled or lost their lives. In 1258, Hulagu Khan took Baghdad and ended the Abbasid Caliphate. This was much more than a symbolic destruction. The central authority of the Sunni Islamic world had vanished. In the Iranian geography, there was no longer a strong political unity, nor an authority to sustain the Sunni institutional structure. This vacuum would shape the next 2 centuries. The post-Mongol era was a time of deep political chaos. The Ilkhanate dynasty continued Mongol rule, but did not impose a centralized religious policy. They engaged with both Sunni and Shia circles, which created an extraordinary flexibility in the religious sphere. Following the collapse of the Ilkhanids, powers of Turkmen origin took the stage. The Kara Koyunlu and Ak Koyunlu entered a persistent struggle for power in western Iran. None of them had a permanent ground for legitimacy. This landscape was the perfect environment for a new power to rise, and that power came from a place no one expected. The Safavid order was founded in Ardabil in the 13th century. Its founder, Sheikh Safi ad-Din, was a charismatic Sunni Sufi sheikh who traced his lineage back to Ali. Initially an ordinary order, it grew and transformed within the post-Mongol chaos. People felt lost. In search of both political and spiritual stability, they sought to belong to a community and find meaning in life by following a powerful sheikh. The Safavid order met this need and formed an armed following of Turkmen tribes. But here is the critical point. The order's initial rhetoric was built on the mystical language of Sufism. While this was powerful for gathering followers, was it enough to establish a state? No, and the Safavids knew this very well. In 1501, Shah Ismail conquered Tabriz and established the Safavid state. Simultaneously, he declared Shia Islam, based on the belief in the 12 Imams, as the official state religion. This was no coincidence. It was the product of a conscious political choice. To the west stood a powerful and Sunni Ottoman Empire. In this context, Shiism was not just a faith, but a political identity boundary, a unique ground of opposition against Ottoman Sunnism. However, Converting a largely Sunni population to Shiism was not easy. This leads us to the second major move. The Safavid state realized that the mystical language of Sufism was insufficient for state administration. Establishing a tax system, creating courts, and reorganizing social order around religion all required a systematic Shia jurisprudence. But there weren't enough Shia jurists in Iran. The solution? Bring them from southern Lebanon and Iraq. Shia jurists from the Jabal Amal region, Najaf and Karbala, settled in Iran under the invitation and patronage of the Safavid court. These jurists were not just clerics. They taught systematic Shia theology, established madrasas, and integrated into state institutions as judges and muftis. A state born from a Sufi order was transforming into an institutional state through classical Shia jurisprudence. In this process, Shiism became more than a belief system. It became the very ground of legitimacy for state power. The Shiization of Iran was not the work of a single decision or a single leader. It was written through the collapse of a civilization, a 200-year political vacuum, the survival reflex of a religious order, and the conscious institutional moves of a state. The Mongols destroyed the Sunni institutional structure. The Safavids stepped into that void. The Shia jurists made that step permanent. The true significance of this process lies here. The theological tradition established by the jurists from southern Lebanon and Iraq gained an increasingly strong institutional identity over the centuries. Clerics began to exist not just in service of the state, but as an independent center of power alongside it. This tension, the balance or imbalance between political power and religious authority, has formed the main axis of Iranian history since the Safavid period. The voice of the ulama resisting the Qajar dynasty in the 1800s was reshaped much more systematically in the 1900s. Khomeini's doctrine of velayat-e-faqih, the guardianship of the jurist over the state, was actually a modern formulation of that long institutional accumulation that began in the Safavid era. In other words, the process Shah Ismail started in Tabriz in 1501 determined not only the change in a people's faith, but also how the relationship between state and religion would be constructed. This relationship remains the cornerstone of Iran's political structure today.